welcome to First Chapter Friday. My name is Lucy, and the book that I'm going to be reading the first chapter of today is called The Boy Who Met a Whale by Nizrana Farook. And I'm actually going to read the first two chapters because they're fairly short. This is an adventure story set on a fictional Sri Lankan island called SERENDIB. And it is a book that includes kidnapping and escape and a huge blue whale, which makes sense because of the title. There are sea turtles, there are treasure maps, there's friendship, and a lot more. The first chapter of the book starts in the middle of a storm out at sea, and we're introduced to a boy. We don't know his name. He's getting tossed about in the ship, and he finds out that everyone on the ship is asleep, and he somehow escapes the shipwreck. The second chapter introduces us to one of the main characters of the book, Razi. He is a local fisher boy, although he no longer is fishing. Something about the ocean scares him, and something about the ocean is making him sad. The ocean also brings him joy, we realize right in this first chapter, as he's watching these newly hatched sea turtles make their way to the shore. So as he's encouraging the turtles to go to the sea, he notices this blob floating in the distance, and it turns out it's a boat. And he sees something hanging over the side of the boat. And so he goes out to discover what is in the boat. And the adventure continues from there. We meet Razi's sister Shifa, and we eventually find out who's in the boat, a boy named Zhang. And the three of them are at the heart of this adventure. They are escaping villains that are after something that Zhang has. And so the three of them working to outwit and outrun these villains and figure out what it is that they're after, and put their brains together to decode a treasure map that is really the heart of the story. But also at the heart of the story is the friendship that builds between these three. So it has a heartwarming bit to it, the connection and the friendship, but at its heart, it is a real page-turner of an adventure story. So I will now read the first two chapters of The Boy Who Met a Whale. Chapter 1. The boy clung to the rail with a death grip as the ship lurched violently in the storm. It was sinking. All around him was darkness and the roar and crash of waves as the ship buckled and rain lashed down. The wind was shrill and whip smart. But for all the noise, the ship was empty of people. Where was everyone? The boy ran along the deck, slipping and sliding to the wheelhouse. It was deserted. He sprinted down the length of the ship, hurtling below deck to the captain's quarters. He pounded on the door, desperate to be heard over the sound of the thunder and the howling of the wind. But it was impossible. The door opened suddenly, and the first mate slipped out, a long leather pouch clutched in his hand. He startled when he saw the boy and quickly hid his hand behind him. "Sir, the storm," began the boy, but the man shoved him aside and hurried down the passage. The boy held onto the side for balance and stumbled into the cabin. The captain was lying in his bunk, fast asleep. The room had been ransacked. Drawers were hanging open, and books had been tossed all over the place. The ship listed sharply, and the debris on the floor slid to one side of the room where water was pooling, creeping darkly over fallen books. The boy froze in shock. The crew had known they would be sailing into a storm. Why was the captain asleep so soundly? Why was the whole ship asleep? He stormed out of the captain's cabin and scrambled up to the deck. A lifeboat had been lowered into the sea, and the first mate was getting ready to climb down, accompanied by a man the boy recognized as the ship's cook. He stared at the men, a cold fear clamping around his heart as the rain soaked through him. "Marco," he screamed, "what did you do? Did you drug them?" The first mate looked back and shrugged, not even bothering to deny it. Rain pelted the men as they prepared to get in the boat. Something snapped in the boy, and he raced toward them and plucked the leather pouch from the first mate's pocket. Yelling, the men gave chase as the boy sprinted away down the ship. Lightning lit up his running figure. The ship groaned and shifted. The men stumbled, and one fell as the boy doubled back, jumping over the fallen man and speeding past his furious companion. The first mate took out a knife that flashed silver in the gloom of the night. He ran fast, closing in on the boy as water filled the deck and crept up his ankles. It was over. The ship was going down, and it was too late to save anyone. The boy wailed in anguish as he threw himself over the side and into the lifeboat. The ship tilted and groaned, making a huge cracking sound as it broke apart. The men ran to the railing and yelled at the boy, but the rain blotted out everything as he rode swiftly away. The last he saw of the ship was it careening jerkily off course. The boy screamed into the wind and wept for his lost friends. Chapter 2. The baby turtle scuttled down the golden beach, wet and gritty with sand. Bit by bit, scores of others emerged, their shiny black bodies, flailing limbs, and beady eyes glinting in the early morning sun. They scampered toward the water, their little legs scuffling over the freshly turned up sand. A bale of tiny turtles, all eager to make their first meeting with the sea. Razi laughed as he ran after them, careful not to step on any of the little creatures. The sight never failed to amaze him and lift his spirits. He'd seen it 100 times, coming early to this stretch of beach to watch the newly hatched turtles running into the sea at sunrise. There was a white one among them, an albino turtle, the pattern on its back etched out in shiny black lines. It was lagging behind and in danger of getting lost. "Go on, go, your friends are leaving," called Razi. He knew not to touch it, and so he hoped his voice would cheer it on instead. Sure enough, the white turtle perked up and scuttled after the others. Overhead, a yellow-beaked ibis wheeled past. Razi kept an eye on it in case it tried to attack the babies. The sea was a grayish blue, deepening gradually to a brilliant turquoise with the rising sun shining on the waves. Coconut trees fringed the beach, their wiry trunks twisted like swaying cobras. Standing on the shoreline, Razi watched in awe. A wave came in, drenching the baby turtles as they swarmed up to meet it. They hopped into the water, greeting it playfully. Razi held his breath. This part always worried him. The turtles looked so little and fragile, but the whole lot of them swam away happily, dots of black on the rolling blue waves surging into the great ocean. He sat cross-legged on the sand and watched them bob away. They disappeared quickly, swimming away to their new lives. He knew that turtles always came back to the very same beach they were born in to lay their own eggs. So someday, when Razi was an adult, he could be back here and see the babies of one of these same turtles. It was a lovely feeling, but it couldn't completely dislodge the sadness that dimmed Razi's world, no matter how much the sun shone and the waves danced. The sun rose higher and prickled his skin. Then he saw something bobbing in the water, something dark. Razi squinted into the horizon. The turtles were all gone, but this was too big to be one of them anyway. Whatever it was heading toward land. The sea glittered a brilliant, sparkling blue now, and the dark object swirled closer and closer to the shore with every wave. It was a boat. Razi stood up. This wasn't a fishing boat like the ones on SERENDIB. This boat was plain and simple, with no sail or outrigger, and as it moved closer, Razi saw it had some strange lettering etched on the side. Foreign letters, thought Razi excitedly. Where had the boat come from? It dipped into a wave and then lifted up, a solitary blot on the empty ocean. As it surged closer, Razi saw something droop out over the side, something small and bunched. A hand, an actual human hand. Someone was in the boat. Razi staggered back, jabbing his foot on a pointed shell. The pain hardly registered as he watched the boat bobbing closer. He looked around the beach wildly to see if there was anyone to help. But as usual, it was entirely deserted. The boat swirled closer and Razi froze. Was he going to have to get into the water? Dread clawed his heart at the prospect. A gull squawked overhead, startling Razi. It was the jolt he needed, and he ran into the sun-warmed water, soaking his clothes as he waded quickly toward the boat. "This is okay. You can do this," he told himself over and over as he tried to ignore the water rising to his chest. Razi reached the boat and looked over the side. An egret swooped by and darted off again, leaving the echo of its cry. Razi gulped. Lying in the bottom of the boat, sunburned and still, was a boy. And that's the end of chapter 2. And so those 2 chapters give you a taste of the adventure that book starts off with right away. You get the really storm-tossed first chapter of this unknown boy, and then you get the chapter of Razi watching the turtles on the beach, and you realize that something in his life has made him sad, and he has to force himself to go out in the water to find what's in that boat. And from there, the adventure picks up. It's such a fun book. I highly recommend reading The Boy Who Met a Whale by Nizrana Farook. Thanks for joining me.